Number 1 is lifer. This is when a birder sees a bird for the very first time in their life, hence the name lifer. Another way to say it is when a birder adds a new bird to their life list, which is just a list of all the birds they have seen over their lifetime. Adding a lifer to your life list is incredibly exciting and always a fun and special treat for birders. Number 2 is leasty, and this refers exclusively to the least sandpiper. So if a birder were to say, I saw 5 leasties today, that simply means that they saw 5 least sandpipers. I think one of the reasons the least sandpiper has this nickname is because it's one of the most widespread sandpipers across all of North America. If you want to refer to smaller sandpipers in general, you would use the term peep, which is number 3. Peeps refer to all small sandpipers, such as least sandpiper, semi-palmated sandpiper, western sandpiper, and many more. Peeps are notorious for being very, very hard to separate from each other, especially in the non-breeding season. In the breeding season, a lot of them have different plumages, so it's a lot easier to separate them. But in the winter, they all look gray and kind of similar. Number 4 is twitching, and this is when a birder or birdwatcher goes to follow up on a rare bird report. For example, let's say that there is a long-tailed duck reported in Texas. This Arctic duck is usually found on the east or west coast, or very far north in the Arctic tundra, of course. But if it were seen in Texas and someone were to go follow up on that report, that would be called twitching. Number 5 is gas hawk, and you'll often hear this if you're doing a hawk count or with other experienced raptor watchers. This actually refers to a helicopter, but hawk counters always get a little laugh out of saying that they saw 5 gas hawks today. And no, eBird does not count this as an accepted species. Number 6 is tick. If you use eBird a lot, you might have already heard this term before. Imagine this. You have 40 species seen in this county and 50 species in this county. They're all in the same state, however, so if you were to add those together, you would have 90 ticks for that state. The more birds you see in different counties in that state means more ticks. So while your state list could be at 200, your tick list could be much higher based on how many counties are in that state and how many birds you've seen inside those counties. For number 7, we've got another eBird term, and that is spa. If you use eBird quite a bit, you might have already seen this. An example would be thrush spa, and what that means is if you went out birding and you saw a thrush species, but you're not sure if it's a gray-cheeked or like a hermit thrush, something like that, then you could put one thrush spa down, and then the team at eBird knows that you saw one bird that was in the thrush family but weren't able to identify it versus just leaving it off your checklist altogether. This is a great way to add more data to your checklist and then ends up helping the science side of eBird as well. For number 8, we've got an abbreviation, and that is HO, and it stands for herd only. So if you've looked at a lot of eBird checklists, a lot of people will put HO in there, and it's really just a shorter way of saying herd only. I use this a lot as it's really easy to type in. Just do capital H, capital O, then that lets the eBird reviewer that you only heard that bird and you did not actually get to see it. It's a lot shorter than typing out herd only on every single bird that you only heard. For number 9, we've got 2 abbreviations, and that is FOS and FOY. FOS stands for first of season, while FOY stands for first of year. So a lot of birders keep year lists, which keep track of how many birds they've seen in that year. For example, my year list right now is at 331, while my life list is up at 482. So to clear up any confusion about what counts as FOS or what counts as FOY, imagine this. In late April, as warblers are heading north from South America, you see a blue-winged warbler. And then, later in fall migration, as they're migrating down south, you see it again. The blue-winged warbler in spring would be your FOY, since that's the first time you saw it for the year, and then the one in fall would be FOS, since it's the first of the fall season. While the one in spring would actually be an FOS as well, a lot of birders count that as the FOY, and then the one in fall would be the FOS, since it is the first of the fall season. For number 10, we've got dip. Now this is when a birder goes twitching, and they look for a rarity, but they don't actually see it. You could say they dipped on that rarity. I've had plenty of dips myself, it's just part of birding, but the great thing is there's always more birds to find. Number 11 is armchair lifer, and this is when a bird species is split apart into 2 separate species. A pretty recent example of this would be with the eastern meadowlark split. We had the eastern meadowlarks in the east, and then there was another population southwest, which those have now been split into the Chihuahuan meadowlark. Previously they were thought to just be a subspecies of the eastern meadowlark, but then they have been split apart, forming 2 new species. So if you were to see the eastern meadowlark in the east and the Chihuahuan meadowlark in the southwest, you now have 2 separate lifers. And the reason they're called armchair lifers is because you saw it in the past and then it was split apart, which now gives you another lifer and you didn't have to do any extra work. For number 12, we have big day and big year. I've kind of lumped these 2 together because they're kind of the same thing, just different time periods. So for a big year, a birder is trying to see as many birds as they can in a selected area for 1 calendar year. For a big day, however, birders are trying to see as many bird species as they can in one 24-hour day. If you haven't done a big day yet, I highly recommend it. It is a lot of fun just to see how many bird species you can see in one day. One thing to keep in mind is you want to be at a place where there are a lot of birds. Texas is a great state to do that, as you are able to see a lot of birds in just a 24-hour time period. There's a lot of planning that goes into both big day and big year, although it is certainly exciting to see how many birds you can see in that selected time period. For big years, you don't have to go all over the ABA area and fly all across the country. You could just do a big year in your local county or state if you wanted to. For number 13, we have patch, and this refers to just a local birding hotspot area that you like. So you might have 3 different hotspots in your patch plus your backyard or something like that. Birders love to keep patch lists as well, and it's a lot of fun to see how many birds you can see in your local area. For 14, we have anting, and this is a pretty strange behavior from birds like northern flicker and other birds. What they do is they go to an ant mound and pick off ants and then rub them on their feathers. What scientists think this does is it helps ward off parasites because of some chemicals the ants have on them. I've seen a northern flicker do this before, and it was pretty exciting to watch. For number 15, we have mega, and this refers to a very, very rare bird. There are many different levels of mega, from the state level mega to the county level mega to the countrywide mega. There's no hard line for a bird to be considered mega. Typically, though, there are less than 10 records of it for the country and less than 5 for the state. For a county level mega, it's often the very first time it's been seen in that county. If you're in the ABA area, you will most often use the term mega for a bird that is either code 4 or code 5. Number 16 is warbler neck, and you can often get this when you're craning your head up in the trees looking for warblers during spring and fall migration. So if you're ever out birding and you're looking at warblers way up in the trees and your neck gets stiff, you can call that warbler neck. Number 17 is kettle, and this is when a group of raptors form large groups as they're migrating north or south. Broad-winged hawks are famous for their giant kettles of sometimes up to thousands of birds as they migrate. Kettles often have one species where there's a lot of them, and then often there are other species of raptors mixed in. So if you ever see a kettle, make sure you search it thoroughly to look for any other hawks that might be inside of it. Number 18 is fallout. During migration, when there's large storms or other weather disturbances, the adverse conditions will cause birds to have to take cover or fall out of the sky. Fallouts can be very exciting for birders because all these birds are concentrated in a very small area. Most often this happens on the coast where birds are flying over the ocean, they hit fog, a rainstorm, or a cold front, then they have to take cover at the nearest piece of land possible. During a fallout, you can often see all kinds of different warblers, flycatchers, and vireos. It is possible to predict a fallout based on different weather patterns, but that would be a whole nother video, as there's a lot to dig into there. Number 19 is pishing, and this is when you call in other songbirds by going psh, 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 psh. It's actually quite effective and can call in a lot of warblers, kinglets, wrens, and other bird species like that. There is a little debate, however, about its usage and how good it is for the birds, but right now people think it is a much better alternative to playback, which is when you use bird calls to call in the birds. Number 20 is skulky, and this refers to a bird that likes to stay deep in the brush, rarely comes out, and you rarely ever see it. A good example of this would be the Swainson's warbler. They're typically found deep in the understory, and the best time to find them is when they're singing. A lot of warblers and sparrows are considered skulky birds. Number 21 is vagrant, and this refers to a bird that is way outside of its normal range. An example would be the large-billed terns that have been popping up in Florida this year, or the American flamingos that have been showing up all over the United States. These birds are often very rare, and a lot of birders travel all over the country on some epic birding adventures to find these guys. Number 22 is the dawn and dusk chorus. This refers to the time of morning and evening when birds are actively singing. For the dawn chorus, it is before the sun has come up, and for the dusk chorus, it's typically after the sun has gone down. This is a fantastic time to go birding, as birds are often very active and calling during this time. This is also a great time to practice birding by ear, which is listening for the birds and then trying to identify them by their call or song. Number 23 is sea watch, and this refers to watching the sea, quite literally, from either a beach or a jetty, looking for seabirds such as shearwaters and storm petrels, albatrosses, cormorants, pelicans, alcids, and many more. I've done sea watching a couple times, and it's a lot of fun. You need a very good spotting scope for this, and I'll link a review to my spotting scope that I absolutely love for sea watching in the video description below. Number 24 is spark bird. This refers to a bird that someone has seen that really got them into birding. I've never really had a spark bird that really got me into birding, but I do remember always loving the cedar waxwing and always wanting to find them. Number 25 is tink call and chip call. These are calls that a lot of songbirds make, and they're much more alike than a bird's individual song, but with a lot of practice you are able to identify birds by these calls. For example, the song sparrow has a very husky chimp call, which makes it quite easy to identify. Number 26 is nutchat, and this one is not widely accepted yet, and that's because my sister came up with it after we had seen a very large grizzly bear. She saw a red-breasted nuthatch and must have got confused and accidentally called it a nutchat, and ever since, nutchat has now been a word in our birding vocabulary, and so if you want to, start calling nuthatches nutchats. For number 27, we have rarity, and this can refer to any bird that is considered rare for its region. I've seen quite a few rarities during my time birding, and it is a lot of fun to find a rare bird. And in fact, a lot of birders miss rare birds, so click the video up here where I break down 7 expert strategies for finding more rare birds.